All right, let's get right into it. We've all heard the story, right? AI is coming for your job. But honestly, that's way too simple. What we're going to do today is move past the headlines and really understand what's going on. Because this isn't just about jobs disappearing, it's about the entire landscape of knowledge work being redrawn right under our feet. And this quote, this really nails it. Look, we've been automating physical labor for centuries. That's nothing new. But this is different. We are now automating the act of thinking itself at a scale and at a speed we have never ever seen before. And that, well, that changes the whole game. Now, just look at the speed here. This is what's so wild. Only 2 years ago, AIs were flunking law school exams. A year later, they're acing them, performing better than 90% of humans. And today, they're reaching superhuman levels in incredibly complex fields like competitive programming. So that old, comfortable idea that human judgment and creativity had this safe little plateau, yeah, we have to throw that idea out the window. This isn't science fiction anymore. This is happening right now. So let's break that down. When we say AI is automating cognition, what does that actually look like in the real world? You know, the disruption isn't a lawyer or a financial analyst just getting a pink slip one morning. It's more subtle than that. It's the tasks inside those jobs that are getting automated and compressed. Think about it. Document review that used to take a team of junior lawyers 2 weeks, now an AI can do it in an afternoon. Market research that took a whole team days of work, now it's done in hours. The jobs are being hollowed out from the inside. And this slide explains the massive economic shift that's happening because of that. The value of pure execution, just knowing the steps to do a task, is dropping like a rock. Why? Because AI can do it for pennies on the dollar. The real value, the skill that's becoming incredibly expensive, is orientation. It's knowing which task to do in the first place, and more importantly, why. Which brings us to this really helpful way of thinking about where we go from here. It's a concept called the higher layer. The idea is borrowed from how software is built. You know, you don't write ones and zeros just to send an email, right? There are layers of abstraction that handle all that low-level complexity for you. Well, AI is starting to do the same thing for thinking. It's handling the grunt work, abstracting it away so that we can focus our brains where they matter most, on high-level strategy, on connecting the dots, and on figuring out what it all means. So, and this is so important, moving to this higher layer isn't some kind of consolation prize. It's actually a much more demanding and frankly more valuable kind of work. Our job is less about churning out the answers and more about directing the machines, interpreting their outputs, and weaving those insights together in a way that only a human can. But okay, before we all get too excited about ascending to this new plane of strategic thinking, we have to talk about the messy, complicated reality. Because these AI systems we're handing all this work over to, they are far from perfect. And here is the giant catch. These models can be wrong. Not just a little wrong, they can be confidently, fluently, and plausibly completely wrong. They invent fake legal cases, they misread medical scans, they write code with tiny hidden bugs, and the scariest part? Their mistakes are so convincing that you often have to be a world-class expert in that field just to spot the error. This creates a whole new and absolutely essential category of work. Let's call it cognitive oversight. This isn't the glamorous high-level strategy stuff. This is the nitty-gritty, painstaking, and sometimes tedious work of being the AI's auditor. It's the critical job of stress testing its conclusions and having the wisdom to know when to say, nope, that sounds good, but it's wrong. And you see this exact pattern playing out everywhere. For a doctor, the higher layer task is taking a diagnosis and figuring out what it means for a patient's life. But the oversight burden is catching when the AI recommends the wrong treatment. For a lawyer, the high-level job is strategic counsel, but the oversight job is spending hours hunting for the fake legal cases the AI just made up. It's two sides of the same coin, a new elevated task and a new tedious burden. So, this all leads to a really difficult question. I mean, this new world of work sounds pretty good for the people who can get to that higher layer. But what about everyone else? And this is where the nice, clean story starts to fall apart. See, the tasks that AI is automating the fastest are concentrated right in the middle. Think data entry, customer service, paralegal work. These were the jobs that used to be a reliable ladder into the middle class for so many people. And now that ladder is being pulled up, leaving a huge gap in the labor market.
And the easy answer you always hear is, oh, we'll just retrain everybody. But history shows us that's a fantasy. These massive economic shifts don't happen neatly within one person's career. They take generations, and they cause a lot of real pain and disruption along the way. We can't just assume this time will be different unless we actively make it different. So, what can you actually do? What skills suddenly become incredibly valuable in this new world? Well, first, there's systems literacy, the ability to see the whole chessboard, not just one piece. Then there's question formation. Getting the answer is easy now. Asking the right question is the hard part. And finally, there's interpretive judgment, the wisdom to know what some data output actually means for a real-world decision.
And it continues. There's adversarial oversight, being a professional skeptic of the machine's work. There's cross-domain synthesis, the creative spark to connect ideas from totally different fields that an AI just sees as separate silos. And maybe the most important of all, human context. The ability to read a room, to understand a client's unspoken fears, to build trust. And let's be clear, these are not soft skills anymore. In the age of AI, they are the new hard skills.
Okay, this brings us to the final and maybe the most critical point of this whole explainer. The future we're heading toward is not set in stone. The single biggest takeaway should be this: technology doesn't decide whether this transition leads to prosperity for many or just a few. That's not a computer science problem, it's a social one. Our institutions, our companies, our public policies, we are the ones who will make that choice. So how do we actually build the on-ramps to this higher layer so that more people can get there? Well, it takes real concerted effort. We need to reform our education system to teach kids how to think, not just what to memorize. Companies need to start investing in their people for this transition, not just looking for the cheapest way to replace them. And yeah, we need smart policies that create a real safety net and ensure that everyone, not just the wealthy, has access to these amazing tools. There's this metaphor of everyone just moving to higher ground to escape the flood of automation. But this quote just perfectly highlights the problem with that image. It completely ignores the people who can't swim. It ignores the communities where the ground itself is crumbling. And it begs the biggest question of all: who owns the boats that can get you to safety? And that really leaves us with the defining question of our time. Is this higher layer, this new, more creative, more valuable kind of work, going to be a destination that's open to everyone? Or will it be an exclusive prize, reserved for the few who are already in a position to win? That's not a prediction. That is a choice. And it's a choice that we are all making together right now.